I don't have coffee today because it's like 6 something p.m. I have, however, had Sense Atlas online for about a month now, and here's where I'm at with it. So I've noticed that now that I've had it online for about a month and starting to use it, it's starting to sort of groan under the load. Now, I knew this was going to happen. Like, the priority initially was to ensure that the data was all open and transparent and so on. So that does a bunch of things that you wouldn't normally do when making a web app to make that possible. So there's sort of that preservation of that principle for starters. And furthermore, you know, the sort of a typical MO that you don't optimize until you've sort of figured out, like, you know, how the heck you want this thing to work with as few moving parts as possible, because optimizing stuff makes it more complicated, and you know, you need it as simple as possible while you're trying to get it to be correct, and then you come in and make it fast later. Unless it is so unbelievably, intolerably slow that you got to fix it right now. And we're kind of at that point. So what you're looking at, this sort of region in the top here, is something that I mapped out today. And again, like, what we're looking at is we're looking at the actual development plan and issue tracker effectively for Sense Atlas itself. And it's up on senseatlas.net. I will put a link to this guy, which is this guy, into the description. Now, so this probably, just like full disclosure, this took me about like 5 hours, including a break, to map out. That's entirely too long. I figure the old prototype, it probably would have taken me about probably an hour. And in fact, it reminded me of that when I was in the shower taking a break and thinking that really, like, the original sort of goal was to be able to like tweet your issue network. And so I just wrote this goal here. Actually, I wrote it like the second to last thing, was the effort that it takes to map out a set of related issues should be roughly equivalent to composing a thread on Twitter or one of its descendants, where each entity, that is each dot, each node, is analogous to a tweet. Straightforward enough. So the goal is to really sort of get something around this size, and I counted this, it's like 46 nodes. So like a little down to like a little bit more of a minute a piece, and that includes like thinking what you're gonna write, you know, how are you gonna connect it, that kind of a thing. So anyway, I'm gonna like maybe step through some of these. I'm not gonna step through all of them, and I'm also going to be chopping out the lag in post, just again, full disclosure. Just because like there's no reason for you to watch me like waiting for a freaking page to load. It's not like, I will say that with caching, like it's reasonably usable, but to like generate all the stuff from scratch, it's still pretty slow. So we're gonna take care of that. That's what this is all about. So what you're looking at here, let's just get into this for starters here, because this is the issue here. So as you can see, Sense Atlas can sometimes be unusably slow. When you have like rights to edit, like the UI looks different. Like when you don't have the rights, like all of these empty ones are just not shown because like there's no, you can't do anything with them, so they don't show up. So it's only the ones with stuff in them. Of course, what you're looking at is you're looking at all the adjacents. You can probably see, you know, when you mouse over, they light up. And so what I'm doing here is mapping out just like, okay, it's unusably slow. What's the problem? Like, how is that unusably slow? So I've got like a few elements here, like, you know, number one, I would say the particularly slow is this, like, after a post, it's like super slow because the RDF store only has like a single modification time for the entire thing. So if anything in the graph like if the graph is updated anywhere, even if it doesn't touch any of this stuff, that invalidates the entire thing, and then everything has to be generated, re-downloaded again. Also, even ordinary gets, like even ordinary page gets, like if the thing is, if it hasn't changed, they can be slow, like the first time a user loads a generated resource. So I'm actually going to go into this one. You can see also that everything gets moved. So like the thing that's in context, the thing that's here is always going to be in the center of the circle. And there's a sense to it as well. You can see that this goal up here that's the initial one. And so like there's a kind of a sense, effectively, sense atlas gets extruded out of it, where you've got the sort of higher level stuff ends up being in the center, and then the like weedier specialist stuff gets pushed out to the edges. And so anyway, I want to take a look at this. So first of all, one of the things that I tried to do initially, this is like earlier this, could have been, yeah, it would have been earlier this week or last week or something like that, was to just use caching in the reverse proxy. Like this it's an application server, so it's already being reverse proxied by like just a vanilla web server anyway. And so, you know, just flip on caching and see what that fixes. There was a problem with that though. So it turns out, and you can see with this argument here, which is opposing this thing, you could argue whether it needs to be an argument or an issue. Of course, these are all color-coded. Arguments are blue, issues are pink, and positions are green. So it turns out that like something was breaking, like it was like the upstream server was sending a 304, but that cache, who knows what was happening with it, but it was causing the templates to break. And so this meant debugging like a system that I didn't write, and I didn't want to do that yet. So that was a going down a rabbit hole that did not pan out. So I'm going to go back to here. So we're back to like this page gets thing. So one of the things that I've been meaning to do, and have been planning to do, is to implement internal caching, right? So that would solve this, because you would just generate it once, and then all subsequent hits would come out of cache from like inside the origin, rather than mess around, generating everything for everybody all the time. Until they get the last modified header, and then they get a 304 subsequently. But like effectively, like the first hit to like any of these things is going to be expensive, because they're not they're too far upstream. They're not cached, basically. And we tried the cache control stuff and the reverse proxy, and yeah, I didn't want to try chasing that bug. Not yet. Maybe I eventually absolutely think it would be a good idea to do that, but not yet. So this suggests some stuff, and it's also got, let me just say this. So in this, the time that it takes to generate a markup rep, so just like a page, right? The time that it takes to generate markup is going to be proportional to the number of graph statements that are in, just because it's just more stuff, right, that you've got to render. So how much stuff is being rendered, that's how long it's going to take to generate the page if you're generating markup. Okay, so what do we have here for suggestions? Oh, additionally too, there's the transforms that operate over the markup. So stuff comes out like in Intertwingler, which is the application server underneath Sense Atlas. Stuff comes out of the origin, and then it gets filtered through transforms. And the transforms just more or less, they operate over the bytes. In this case, it cheats a bit, so if it's in the same process, it'll operate over the already parsed DOM tree or whatever. And so they're just expensive, like operations that have to, if you could cache them, if there was internal caching, they would just, they would cost the first time ever, until the entire thing was invalidated again, of course, but it would cost the first time, and then all subsequent elements would be cheap. because they would be cached. And then finally, there is these catalog resources. So I'm going to just click on that. So the catalog resources are like a collection of basically like what's on the site, more or less, and they're connected to each other through a set of semantic relations. Now, they are big, or they tend to be big. And so one of the sort of solutions that came up with was to implement a set of provisional JSON-LD variants for the large resources, notably the catalogs and the concept schemes, that and put them through client-side scripting instead. And that's what this is here. So there's a bunch of data lists, and they power like any kind of anything that's got like an autofill. They power, so any of this stuff, so those are all just generated by data lists. Now the data lists are being like pulled in by the templates, and that of course entails that like they were markup. Long story. And so the markup is necessarily bulkier. We already saw that. JSON-LD is cheaper to generate. I believe that's in one of these somewhere. It doesn't matter. And then there's a few other things as well that are, so this is sort of like this sort of thrust is effectively like, let's make it so that this thing can pull down JSON-LD instead of markup. And then that will just inherently make it a whole bunch faster. And like, no matter when, like it'll be faster after a post, it'll be faster just on a regular get, it'll just be faster across the board. So that's definitely one thing. And then there's a couple of other concerns that are sort of like, you can see how they branch though. Like, first of all, this is not like a strictly hierarchical structure, but it's like hierarchical-ish, Like there is a sense to it. Like these blue lines, for example, are like a general to special anyway. The yellow ones are like a suggestion, so they're not necessarily directed, like or it's a kind of a tangential relationship. And then there's a sort of like a more sort of an aqua color that is the strict subtask. You might not be able to see the distinction. I'm going to tweak the palette a little bit at some point. But the idea is like a position versus a task. So you're looking at a task, you can see that there. A position is going to be more green, and a position is just not necessarily actionable. So this is actually the top level task. Take immediate provisional measures to speed up Sense Atlas, provided they're non-destructive. So like I don't want to do anything that's going to like significantly compromise the design, because I have plans. Namely, I have a particular way that I intend to be doing internal caching. It has to do with a content addressable store. And then I also have a particular way to be adding the modification time, like more granular modification times to the graph database as well. I got a clear idea how I want to do that. But these are two very significant projects. And then there's a third aspect of it too, which is this client-side graph. The client-side graph is potentially, it can get expensive to run. So the edge uncrossing diagram, so like this is a Sugiyama plot. I just put it on a circle. Like if you're familiar with GraphViz at all, it's the same thing. I'm using D3 DAG. And it's just like, it can get slow. And so, this would be the sort of the last piece. And to tell you the truth, like this, I slapped this thing together. This is like the fourth attempt. This graph is like the fourth attempt at a visualization for this thing. There are things that I know that I want to change about it. I could absolutely spend months on this, and it would just take for freaking ever. So it's one of the things that is, would speed it up. There's a ton of things that I could do that would speed it up. But like I could spend months just on this visualization, and I will. But there's like, if the pages are taking freaking 47 seconds to load, like that is just too goddamn long. And so that's the priority right now. And I just wanted to highlight one last thing, one last sort of a subtree here. And that's that, like, a lot of these things, so this is, for example, this is a text area, as you probably noticed. All of these controls are doing round trips to the server, and that is like pulling everything through. And a lot of them just don't have to. About the only time, and I think I wrote this down here in one of these things, there's one, about the only time Sense Atlas needs to do a full page refresh, and even then that's debatable, is when a new entity is added through a semantic relation. So if you add one of these things and blah, 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 okay, and that's brand new, you hit enter on that, that's gonna go to the new thing. So you can go and fill it out. That's like the only time you would even contemplate, and then there's like arguments for making this all just be front end anyway, but like the argument that the only time you would ever contemplate is like if you're fully making just like a new thing. And so there's another little sub project in here, which is to write front end code that hijacks the form submissions and just supplants them with Ajax or whatever the hell you call Ajax these days, fetch API or whatever anyway. So you can see the branches, and I'll just go back to this again. So what this tool helps you do, at least this module of it, because there's a bunch of them and a bunch more that I'm making, is it helps you organize all of the sort of dependencies and all of the sort of issues that get raised in the process, the what about this situation, and then you can graduate that into actual things you can do. These are actual tasks that are actionable, and then proceed to actually do them, and then keep track of that. So it'll eventually mature into something that can actually manage projects. Right now, I'm focusing on the what the heck do we even do aspect of it, which can then get sort of matured into an actual thing for planning. But this is sort of the problem that I was trying to solve initially, 12 years ago with this, was a lot of the job is just figuring out what the job even is. And throughout this process, when I wasn't waiting for the damn page to load, which I'm obviously going to fix because I have actionable things to do to fix them, is just the smoking out of the details and the issues, and even just things that I hadn't even thought of and thought about later and added on to it. Just sort of the issues with the graph, the front end. There was something about adding to the front end that maybe there should be a throbber or an indicator that it's loading, for example. Now, I didn't think about that until I started, writing out the details. I'm like, oh yeah, I should just stick that down. While the graph is there it is right there. While the graph layout is being computed, consider some kind of progress bar or analogous animation to show that the user that something is happening. Because it's unavoidable that that this thing is going to take some time to load anyway. And there's a bunch of reasons and things, remedies and stuff. You can look it up, you can go through it. Obviously it's going to be slow until I make it faster. But that is this tree, not a tree, this is a directed graph, thank you very much, is my plan for what I'm going to be doing with this in the near future. And by near future, I mean immediately. So that's all I got for you. And I would finish my coffee, but I finished it already.